The following podcast is a W2M Network partnership production. Visit W2Mnet.com for all of our other great podcasts, plus news, reviews, articles, and opinions from the worlds of wrestling, video games, football, and entertainment.
Welcome to This Week in the AFL alongside Eric Watkins, Dylan Golden, and Jordan Palacio of AFL Fan Zone. I'm Stephen Err. I want to kick off the show today by wishing Jordan Palacio a very happy birthday. Hope you have a good one today.
Thank you.
All right, so let's get into Super Series 5 here. First game, we said this was the secondary of Dalian and Beijing, is Dalian and Shanghai. Because Shanghai's now technically the second best team in the league, because Beijing is undefeated going into China Bowl 1. We'll get to that a little later. But early in this game, and I watched this game, of course, Shanghai, they struggled once again. They just struggle all the time. Every game they played, they struggle in the beginning, and then nothing different here against Dalian.
Well, I think it's been like that for, as you said, for the entire season. It's just been these kind of slow starts. Granted, Shanghai did go on to win this game by 40 points, or 42 points, actually. But that's just been kind of the recurring theme for the Skywalkers this year, has just been kind of taking a while for that engine to start to kind of get going, and then you have to watch out for it stalling, which it has before, especially in the Qingdao game last week. With Shanghai, with Shane Austin at the helm, it's been kind of slow. Shane Austin only going 16 for 26 in this game. Granted, Dalian helped out the Shanghai offense a ton with a lot of turnovers, but that's been Shanghai's main problem. And for Shanghai, it's cost them a spot in the China Bowl. And I think as well, real quick, that you kind of have to put into question Shanghai's motivation at this point. They were sitting at 2-2 coming into this game. They already knew they weren't going to the China Bowl. You come up against a lowly team like Dalian. I'd be interested to see where most of the guys' heads were at, knowing that you can't get into the championship. There's nothing you could do to get into the championship, and you're coming against an 0-4 team at the time, now 0-5. So I think I would love to be a fly on the wall in those kind of practices with the guys and just see where their heads are at. But yeah, these slow starts for Shanghai has been the theme all year for these guys.
Yeah, it definitely has been, especially and starting in Super Series 1 against Beijing. They got off to a very, very slow start, almost came back, but then lost after they failed the 2-point conversion. And that really kept going for the rest of the year. They always either would be tied or they would be losing for pretty much all of their games, and of course, playing Dalian did help them overcome their slow start. But they have had the talent to overcome the slow starts, and sometimes they haven't even been able to finish games, for example, against the Clipper. So I do question their motivation, although I can't question it too much because they did come in and stomp on Dalian, a thing that has pretty much happened in every Super Series so far. So they looked like the team we expected them to be. Again, I can't say this much because they are playing Dalian, so Dalian isn't that much of a sample size, but they probably are disappointed because they did have high expectations. But if this were any sort of positive, overcoming a slow start and ultimately winning by 42, again, I know it's against Dalian. It's basically a glorified scrimmage, but they ended up winning by 42. They scored 63, held Dalian to 21. So they didn't get off to a slow start to the point where it hindered them from coming back and holding a comfortable lead. But they did get off to another slow start when they could have really gotten out on Dalian. And it's been a recurring theme. It's been the story of their season, and that is probably why they are sitting at 3-2 and not in that China Bowl.
Well, Jordan said it best. Shanghai, and Shane Austin is a microcosm as well, they're like an old diesel engine. It takes a lot of time to get those things going up to top power, but once they do, they'll keep running and running and running. Unfortunately, when they come up against a good defense like Qingdao, they can stall. But they could easily afford to do that, kind of just to go through the motions against a team in Dalian who, let's face it, are on the verge of a whitewash. As far as the players' motivations, like Jordan said, they know that they're playing in the third place game, but I would hope and they especially showed that after the first quarter that they want to at least go into that third place game with a winning record. That way, no matter what happens, you can come home and say, okay, we at least finished 500, or we were 4-2, third place, so they have something to build on going towards next year. It's a little too give up, but I can kind of understand they weren't playing at their best. Good thing they could afford not to.
And like every week, Shanghai found out what was wrong, and they showed up after a slow start, like they always do. There was one point in this game where the Shanghai defense, with Dwayne Hollis, and I don't even know who else on defense, but anyway, they recorded 2 interceptions. Both returned for touchdowns. So that defense really woke them up, must have woken them up in this game, because the offense was the reason for the slow start, so the defense had to step in and show them what they needed to do to win.
Well, we kind of started talking about story of Shanghai season. Let's flip the script now to Dalian. This has been the story of the Dalian season from start to now the finish of the quote-unquote regular season. This is, if I'm not wrong, this might be one of their highest scoring games of the entire season at 21 points. This has just been a team that at the very start, the big news was, Joe Hills isn't coming over. And it's just kind of they've been riding that wave ever since of what do we do now on offense? This isn't a team that is, really capable on offense. You got Yatim or Yatim, however you pronounce his name. And, sorry if I butchered that. Threw for about 50%. 50% completion rate, 17 for 33, and then 3 picks on top of that. This has just been the recurring theme. It doesn't matter. Now, Shanghai is one of the best defenses. I think probably third best defense in the league, but I guess in a 6-team league, that doesn't say a whole lot. But one of the best defenses, I think, talent-wise, especially when you look at the roster. But it doesn't matter what defense Dalian has come up against all year long. They've been committing turnovers, and they haven't been able to put up points. And when you do that, when you add those two things together, you get a bad team and probably a bad record. And 0-5 is both of those. So when you look at the Dragon Kings, that's just what their entire season has been. It's just been turnover after turnover, which has led to loss after loss.
Yeah, I think coming in, even with Joe Hills, they were going to be relying basically all of their hopes and their offense on Joe Hills. And when he wasn't there, they didn't know where to go. They didn't know how they were going to move the ball. They didn't know how they were going to create points. And on defense, even to start the season, they didn't really have that impact player like the Skywalkers have in Dwayne Hollis, or like the Clipper have in Jake Metz or Tanner Varner. Dalian just doesn't have that wow factor. They don't have that star player to lead them, even if the rest of the team around them is not as great. Eric said it a couple weeks ago, the 5 worst teams in the CAFL are Dalian, and Dalian. And that is still true today because, as Jordan said, 21 points is probably one of their highest outputs, which is pretty sad, especially for an arena football league where you're supposed to be pretty high scoring. And the fact that we've seen them put up 7 points before, mustering 1 touchdown is not going to do it, especially in the arena football league. They just never, in any of the Super Series, were able to move the ball, create turnovers on defense, and they couldn't avoid turnovers on offense. So when you put that together, you're not going to have much success in football.
Well, this really sums up the infamous, you call it Joe Hill syndrome, you call it what have you, but I don't think the Dragon Kings came into this season with a plan, even if they were to get Joe Hills. There was nothing as far as schemes, nothing with offense, nothing settled at quarterback, secondary receiver, what have you. It's just, we have Joe Hills, that's it. Now when you have nothing and you don't even take time through the season to progress and get a plan, get practices, get any sort of cohesion, 0-5, let's just face it now, 0-6 is going to happen. Yes, they had 21 points this time. Yes, they were able to get 25 in a game. But when you see other teams and teams that you face put up 40, 50, 60, 70, well, how are you going to expect to win?
I love that joke. It's so funny every time. The 5 worst teams are all Dalian. Speaking of 5, and speaking of Dalian, 5 Dalian turnovers, 2 interceptions that were returned for touchdowns. God. So pretty much Dalian is like the black sheep of the family here in the CAFL. They're the lost cause. It's just not a good time with them. And they did lose 60. You guys said 63-21.
Yeah, that was the final on that one. 63-21, 42 points, 42-point loss, which isn't anything new for Dalian, sadly, this year.
And I believe 21 points is the season high for Dalian, which that's an average in actual American football. It's like an average score.
Yeah.
So the second game from Super Series 5 had Guangzhou against Beijing. And Beijing jumped out to that 34-13 lead, and everything was great. Oh, wait, we know what they're going to do. They're going to blow it again. Because that's what Beijing's done all season. They blew it again. Not only did they blow it, though, 2 touchdowns they gave up were on 4th down. That's the worst possible time to give up 2 touchdowns, to give any touchdowns up.
Yeah, I mean, this has been the whole story for Beijing has just been they punch in the mouth and then they kind of lay off for a little bit. And I don't understand why. Maybe, in this game, I mentioned earlier with Shanghai, it could be a motivation type deal. They get up to this early lead, and then they kind of want to take it easy a little bit. They know they're the number 1 seed. They know they're in the China Bowl. You don't want any injuries. You don't want anything like that to happen. But when it's happened in 4 out of your 5 games, the other game being Dalian, which they led for the entire way. Well, actually, they didn't lead for the entire way. They were down after the first quarter. But, I mean, the point still remains. They jump out to these huge leads, and then these other teams start creeping up. However, though, they were able to find their separation after Guangzhou made a little bit of a push. Beijing re-separated the game. They ended up winning 55-32, so that's a 22-point win. It's a good win for Beijing. It's just been simple stuff. Colin Taylor, our guy, went off 102 yards and 3 scores. It's just been this whole thing, and it's going to be very interesting for next week how Beijing attacks this Qingdao defense who's already seen them one time and who's already come back on them in one game and almost got a victory. But a late turnover kind of stopped Qingdao's momentum. With Beijing, it's just been get up early and then let this lead go. And Steve and I were talking about it off air. I don't get it. I don't understand how it happens. And I don't think Steven really can put his finger on it either. When you have this good of a team, probably the top 2 or 3 leading receivers in Colin Taylor and Erwin Sinet Wu, the best passer, I think, in the league, and Luke Collis, or at least the statistic-wise best passer. I just don't understand how they let teams back into the games like this. And it might cost them next week against Qingdao.
Yeah, well, we talked about Shanghai and how it is typical of them to get off to slow starts. Now it's typical of Beijing to get off to big leads and then play slow the rest of the way. But after giving up that big lead, they find a way to come back and seal the deal. That's why they finished undefeated this season. They did not have to finish anything against Dalian. They kind of let things play out, and it happened the way it happened. But you can question motivation in this one because they were in the China Bowl. Everything was sealed. Guangzhou was out. So there really was no motivation like there was in the rest of the games. But this has been a recurring theme all season for Beijing. It just didn't happen in this one game where there was probably a lack of motivation when it's just it is kind of a head scratcher how they have allowed in basically their entire season to get off to big leads and then let up and then come back and finish the deal. That's not going to work when you're playing for a championship, especially against the Clipper team that obviously is the second best team in the league behind them because they are playing, but that's not going to cut it usually when you're playing for a championship. And they do have a lot of talent, so they do have the ability to recover from letting the lead off, but it is very questionable as to why this has been a recurring theme. And not just before this game, it really happened in their 3 other games, of course, not counting the Dalian game.
Well, I have seen this firsthand, we could all say, and especially with the performance as it's played out so far through the Super Series, that Beijing is the super team of this league. Without a doubt. But I've seen this happen with super teams. It's not just a punch you in the mouth and back off. It's a punch you in the mouth, celebrate, do a dance, and then if you get back up, they kind of run and hide. You have just tremendous talent, and you do have that early aggression on, but you figure that once you get to that 3-4 touchdown lead, you can be showtime instead of putting your foot down, icing out the game. And against a Qingdao team in the China Bowl that, again, they've seen the more the defense, they know how to change their tactics and make adjustments, you can't go into showtime mode whatsoever. If Beijing didn't get that out of their system now, before China Bowl 1, just to try to cement a 5-0 record, I don't think it's going to happen in the game itself.
So Beijing blows a 34-13 lead. They still wound up with the win. They finished 5-0. They're on the way to the China Bowl. But obviously they have some work to do when it comes to finishing strong. One other team here that didn't finish strong, the Qingdao Clipper. Oh, man. It was just such a disappointing loss to the Shenzhen Naja. What a game. This is the best game of the week. We didn't expect this coming in. The Qingdao,
Definitely not.
We thought Qingdao would just destroy Shenzhen because of the way Shenzhen's been playing the past 3 weeks. Qingdao's offense struggled in this game, except for, of course, for Reggie Gray. Reggie Gray is their best player on that team. So here's the situation that went down. Shenzhen leads. I don't remember what score they led by, but there's about 2 minutes left. And he catches a pass. He's going to the end zone. And out of nowhere, here comes Tristan Purifoy. And it's a fumble. Reggie Gray fumbles the ball. In the end zone, Shenzhen recovers, runs out the remaining minute and a half, and they pull off the upset. So, guys, what hearing that, what's your reaction?
Well, it's kind of been, I don't want to say an epidemic. Well, yeah, I will use that word, actually. It's kind of been an epidemic in the college game, hasn't it? Especially in the first couple of weeks. Now, this is a little bit of a different example, but how many times have we seen it this year in college football where there are guys clear through to the end zone celebrating and then drop the ball before they get into the end zone? It's happened, like 3 or 4 times in the first couple of weeks of the college season? Now, I get it. This is a little bit different of a situation, but in that close of a game, hearing that is, ooh, man, I would not want to be Gray heading back into that huddle after you just blew the game pretty much for your team. With the Shenzhen game, the Naja got the 7-point win, and I've been saying it so much in the previous weeks that this offense is predicated by the defense, and it happened. Including that turnover, Shenzhen was able to force a couple turnovers, get the extra possessions, and Dak Britt went off in this game. I guess it's one of those, you live by the sword and you die by the sword. This week, they finally lived by it. Britt broke 3 records this week. He ran the ball for 25 times. He ran the ball, 115 yards and 4 scores. So they finally found some success, or more success, enough success to win a game, coming with the ground attack. And I still don't know what to say after. And I'm going to speak for everybody else here. We never expected Shenzhen to come out and beat Qingdao, but I guess that's why they say, games aren't played on paper. Shenzhen, with some momentum heading into their game against Dalian, which I think we all know how that one's going to end up next week in the 4th place game or whatever, the 5th place game, actually. But yeah, big time upset I wrote down in my notes. And Qingdao not going into the China Bowl the way they wanted to with a loss.
Yeah, look, again for the 3rd game of the Super Series, because no games had any implications on the upcoming China Bowl and the other games around it. It's motivation. I don't know how motivated the Clipper were coming into this game. They're playing a team that has 1 win in Shenzhen. They haven't won since Super Series 1. The Clipper have their spot in the China Bowl already locked up. They just come off a big win against Shanghai. What do they have to play for, really? But Shenzhen really wanted to end their season off on a high note, beating a Clipper team that is in the China Bowl, and they did that. Clearly, they were more motivated. Dak Britt finally broke out after 3 different Super Series where we're talking about his completion percentage and how he needs to throw more and how he was relying on the run. He finally broke out. And that Reggie Gray fumble, that's going to do it. When it's a close game and you fumble like that and they can score right away, that is a cardinal sin in football, and that came back to bite them. And that is definitely not the way Qingdao wanted to go into the China Bowl with a loss to a team. Of course, this is no disrespect to Shenzhen, but they did have one win, that coming against Dalian, who we all know what a win against Dalian means. So Qingdao isn't exactly entering the China Bowl with the most momentum, but they should be fine because they have the talent to beat Beijing. But this was a big win for Shenzhen momentum-wise and finishing their season out. And they clearly had the more motivation, and they wanted the win more than Qingdao did.
If anything, close game, protect the ball, protect the ball, protect the ball. And yes, this was extremely uncharacteristic. Just in the situation and even how the game played out. This is one of those games to where I'm a little hesitant in saying never, but you're never going to see something like this again. Dak Britt, we all knew what he was. They just finally decided to scrap any hopes building something on the pass and just say, you go ahead and literally run wild. He did. The passing this time came as a bonus, especially against a Clipper defense that I'm not sure if they were as prepared as they should have been or what, because if they were, this would not have been a close game. It should not have come down to that fumble. And again, when you have a team that can literally run out the last minute and a half of the game, possessions become so much more important. So they better hope that this isn't haunting going into the China Bowl, but I wouldn't be surprised if it is.
Jordan mentioned it. Dak Britt shined in this game. Wow. He struggled the last 2 games, and he just blew up against Qingdao in this one. 25 carries, 115 rushing yards, 7 total touchdowns. Wow. Look out, Dalian. You're in trouble. All right. I mean, yeah. What can the AFL learn from the CAFL? That is around the corner. You're listening to This Week in the AFL.
Are you an arena football fan looking for the latest news involving your team? Inside the Arena has you covered. Check us out for the latest news around both the Arena Football League and the Chinese Arena Football League. Read all of our stellar articles at InsideTheArena.org. Also, follow us on Twitter at @inside_arena and like us on Facebook at facebook.com/InsideTheArena.
Hi, I'm Donovan James, and welcome to the Don James High School Football Report, everybody, where we discuss and debate the hottest prep and college football recruiting topics in the country every week. Only here on NGSC Sports, 9:30 Eastern. For more, follow me on Twitter at Don James Sports.
Would Flex Seal be a better option at your flex position?
Do you need a sham wow to clean up the mess you make after your quarterback throws another interception?
Then we have the solution for you.
I'm Randy Isbell.
And I'm Mike Mitchell, and we're here to clean up your fantasy mess with more power than OxyClean.
Check out the Fantasy Football to the Max podcast every Monday and Thursday at W2Mnet.com.
If you're in the Pittsburgh area, look up McCrigger Photography on Facebook. That's McKriger Photography. We specialize in senior pictures, portraits, wedding photos, engagement photos, and family photos. Contact us for rates and dates.
It's game time, boys, and we know football. Football to the Max is the podcast for you if you want in-depth analysis over the NFL and college football. We preview all the action coming your way over the weekend. And we break down all the big action after it's happened. Plus, we tackle all the big news topics and discuss everything when it comes to the gridiron. So come check out Football to the Max every Tuesday morning and Friday morning on the W2M network.
Hello to all you Arena League football fans out there. I want to personally welcome you to join us, AFL Fan Zone, every Tuesday night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time for a weekly recap of all things AFL. You got stuff to do on the weekends, which means you probably don't have time to sit down and watch every single game every week. That's where AFL Fan Zone comes in. Not only do we break down the week, but we provide you with everything you need to stay up to date with the AFL, including Players of the Week, Power Rankings, and the weekly standings. Best part is, the recap is fully interactive between the viewers and the host. Just search AFL Fan Zone on YouTube and you can find all of our archived videos, including game previews, recaps, and weekly updates. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, and at our website at www.aflfanzone.com. AFL Fan Zone, your internet home for the best AFL fans.
All right, welcome back. So, we know it's sad. We can all here agree with this. Very sad. The CAFL has 6 teams. The AFL has 4. So that just tells me, oh my God, the AFL is doing something very wrong, and I don't know what it is. What something obviously. The AFL needs to look at the CAFL. Now they're not the same thing. They're different owners, different everything. The only thing they have the same is the players. Some players from the AFL go into the CAFL, but they need to look at what the CAFL is doing and bring that over to America so they can save this league that we come to know and love the past 30 years.
Well, for the CAFL, I think right now they've had 2 or 3 different things working for them. Number one, especially in China, this is new to all of the Chinese. This is something extremely cool. Like Colin Taylor said, you know, him and I think Luke Collis, I might be wrong on that, don't hold me to that, were throwing a football around in one of the malls in China, and he mentioned how so many new people came up to him and said, oh, what is that? What are you guys doing? So it's fresh. It's something new for the Chinese to see, and that's why, we've been hearing over the past couple weeks that all these investors have poured in, as Tanner Varner said, millions of dollars into this league. For expansion for next season. So the first thing is the Chinese Arena Football League is new and it's fresh. And I think that's probably the biggest reason why it's kind of caught this fire that it has. And another thing too is it's all timing. I mean, we've seen it 2 or 3 times this season, especially over the past couple weeks, that, oh my goodness, look at the CAFL and all their celebrations. They've so taken advantage of the fact that they let their guys celebrate, where in the National Football League, the no fun league, if you will, we get fines for shooting a jump shot in that league. Something like $12,500 I saw someone got fined for doing his best LeBron James fadeaway. So that's 2. I think, but the biggest thing right now is in terms of CAFL versus AFL is this one word right here: stability. The CAFL, granted, it's their first year, part of a 5-year experiment, but they've maintained stability. They are pulling all these people in to watch their games. I think they're probably averaging at least $10,000 plus per Super Series. It's just been that. We saw last year Jacksonville pulling in 8,000 to 9,000 people. We heard, they might be leaving, they might not be leaving. There's all these questions. And right now in China, the only question is how many more teams are they going to be bringing in? I think that's, in terms of AFL versus CAFL, like I said, stability. That's been the biggest thing right now going for China, the Chinese Arena Football League.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with Jordan more on some of these points. I mean, if you look at these celebrations, they've been blowing up Twitter. We've seen Bleacher Report. We've seen SportsCenter. We've seen all kinds of different sports media that are huge here in America just loving these celebrations. And even before the season, we saw pieces in Time and the Los Angeles Times. So this was big. This was known. And now that these celebrations are coming in with all these really, really cool and innovative celebrations, they're making their way over here, as I said, very big sports media sites, and that is helping a lot, along with the fact that this is very popular in China because it's new. They haven't seen American football in China before, but now they have it. They're seeing some of the best arena football players and not even football players in the world playing at a very high level, and clearly it is popular. We're seeing a lot of people go to the games, and we're not hearing all the questions. Like, granted, it's the first year, so there's going to be some things to figure out over the next couple of years as they enter their second, third, fourth year. But for right now, there aren't any questions. It's popular, whether it be in America because of the celebrations or in China, we're seeing great turnouts. We heard Colin Taylor talk about his experience while throwing a football and all the people that came over to him. So this is something that's fresh in China, something that people are loving to see. They like to see it in China, especially the Chinese. It's something new for them. They have not seen American football. So timing is really key here, and really just the way they're doing things and the way they're pulling in people has them in a really, really good position, even though they're only ending their first year in a couple of days.
Personally, I do think one part is timing, because with that freshness, you say, hey, we've got 2 billion people that don't know the sport compared to 300 million that do. You don't have to work around all these extra seasons or competing leagues and competing buildings and this and that. You have free reign. And because of that, the CAFL just took off and say, hey, we want to invent something for all these wonderful Chinese fans and Chinese people to consume, make it enjoyable, make it fun, celebrations included. And that's a gigantic part of it. You time to where you put the best product out there for a whole new market, and that's why the investors see it and it's taking off. But to me, it's about planning. The CAFL took a couple of years to get off the ground. Even before their first season was delayed, they said, we still need to bring in people to the game to get a feel of it, so they held the university championships. That brought in a lot of Chinese talent, some great Chinese players, and the Chinese as a whole got to understand the game, and that made it even more enjoyable. That first taste got them ready for when the CAFL officially took off this season. With the AFL, there isn't that method of planning. You don't have teams locked into multiple years as an experiment. You just now in the AFL said, we need this commitment, we need this planning for a team for 2 to 3 years. Before that, it was just year to year to year to year to year. And then you also had issues about some teams coming in when they weren't ready. Look at what happened in Las Vegas. Look what happened the first year or two in Los Angeles. When you don't have a concrete plan, knowing how to build, you are doomed. I think really since 2010, that's what we've been seeing for the AFL. There hasn't been much of a plan. Look what's happening.
That's a great point Eric made. Planning. That's awesome. Awesome. That's a great point. I'm just going with the American Arena Football League right now. Not much planning is obviously not being done because now there's only 4 teams when there was 8 back into the 2015 season. And there's 8 back in 2016. How many were in 2015? Because there were a few teams that folded after 2015.
There were 12.
12. So this, you see it's going down more and more. We'll go from 12 to 8 to 4. Next up is 0. If you do the math. So what the league needs to do here with this, we're going to have to sit through this 4-team season in 2017. What they need to do during that time, though, and Eric makes this point, plan. Talk to the cities. Tell them, all right, here's a contract. How many years would you fund this team for? And then that city and the league need to work together to make sure that these fans realize, hey, look, football. And they get attracted to this certain football team that they have, and it becomes more successful. And then the city will make more money off the venues and the whatever's. And they'll want to keep the team there longer. So that's one big part of planning. I liked Eric's point right there.
I think too, Stephen and I were talking before the show about this. he mentioned that there was a story that recently came out about Sacramento and San Antonio, right? That they might be getting expansion teams in 2018, right?
Yeah.
However, like I said earlier, before the show, that is, this has been the whole story with the Arena Football League for the past how many years? Is that we have all these new teams coming, even I think, right, like Mexico City was like an option, right?
Yes.
All these new teams, we could do all this. But right now, especially after everything that's happened over the past couple months, how far do you believe them? How far do you believe that there's actually these teams coming in? Now, I definitely know, especially, there's a certain Twitter account, Arena Football in SA, run by a certain someone who may or may not be affiliated with Steven, the sometimes delusional Twitter account, would love to see an Arena Football team back in San Antonio. But I don't know where I believe these guys, where all these stories were, we might get a team here, we might get a team there. After what just happened and after the past 3 years, you just cut your league down by more than half. Where do you believe this league when it comes to that? Because right now, I don't even think I believe that there will be these two expansion teams after 2017. Do I hope to be wrong? Absolutely. I want to see this league, and like the rest of us, we love this league and we want to see it succeed. But I don't know if I'm at a place to where I can believe what the league is saying or where it's rumored, where it's rumored to be going.
Personally, the reason why I'm skeptical is this. Those two teams, they are announced for the 2018 season. How many times, especially since the league came back in 2010, have we seen teams have just 1 year to get prepared, get up and running, and eventually fail? If that timeline holds true, this will be perpetuated with those two franchises. This is why the CAFL has had the best approach. We said, okay, we're going to need a minimum of 2 years, and then once those 2 years are up and we can get going, we're going to commit to 5. If the AFL wants to be viable, they say, if you want a team, you have everything set up and can get everything funded, you're going to sit out 2 years. That should give you plenty of time to get your stability in front office, stability in an investment group, stability in coaching. Then you can get the players as they come in. And then after that 2 years, you have to commit to at least a minimum of 3 to 5, which would be much more viable because you've had all of this time in exploration. The AFL, blame the commissioners, Kurz, Butera, whomever you want, they don't want to slow play it, as I like to say. And this is a time where they need to. This will be the 3rd consecutive year to where this is supposed to be a bridge to next season. I'm personally tired of it. Fans are growing tired of it. And if you have fans grow tired of it who aren't going to pay the money, players would start to grow tired of it. You see what happened in the XFL. You see what happened in the UFL. The formation, even before they stepped onto the field of the All-American football, my personal favorite, the A11. People get tired, they're going to move on. This is going to be another case.
Look, when we talk about the AFL, there are so many ifs and mights and buts. Oh, they might join in 2017. If they can put it together, they'll be here in 2017 or 2018. There's too many ifs and mights and buts for me to believe that this is heading in the right direction or that they're going to get any teams. I know there's reports of Sacramento and San Antonio or whatnot, but right now I'm hearing too many ifs. Might in 2018, might in 2017. It's just there's too many unanswered questions, and when there is a team that is set up, they usually don't. Their stability is always going to be a question here because there's lacking stability in the AFL. We're talking about the Tampa Bay Storm have been around, but other than that, we've seen a lot of teams come and go very quickly. Las Vegas, New Orleans, to name a few. These are teams that come and then they go. There's no stability in this league. There's a lot of ifs and mights and buts. And when there's a lot of ifs and mights and unanswered questions that go from season to season, then we're going to keep it going with these 4 teams because they can't answer these questions, and they're going to keep setting up these teams to, in 2 to 3 years after they come to exist, like the Los Angeles Kiss, to fold because this is a league that lacks stability and is having too many situations where there's too many ifs and mights.
So, like Jordan said, and by the way, Jordan, those guys at AFL and SA, that's their own thing. I don't feel myself with those guys. well, one of them, yes, but he does his own thing with that. He's a big advocate for that. But Sacramento is not going to work out, and I'll tell you why. You probably didn't know this until now. Longest drought in NBA history for the team without a title, the Sacramento Kings. Won a title since 1951. So what makes you think a team with no title, like they don't know what a title is, why would a real football team there work out? It won't. People want to see teams winning. You're not going to get a winner in Sacramento. Hasn't happened in, 65 years now? About 65 years, yeah.
And oh, by the way, think back to where that franchise was. They didn't even move to Sacramento until the 80s. They were before that in Kansas City and Omaha, then before that in Cincinnati. When they won that title in 51, they were in Rochester.
Wow.
Yeah. You talk about a drought. That's a drought that spans decades and time zones.
Well, that's wow. That just makes my case even more. No team. Don't put a team in Sacramento. Put a team in Los Angeles. I mean, it's failed so many times, but put them in the Staples Center, I guarantee it won't fail. Now, San Antonio.
The Avengers didn't.
Yeah, there you go. San Antonio, I see that working out because if, according to the guy from AFL and SA, if they do get an arena football team, that team's going to play the AT&T Center, home to Spurs. You don't think the Spurs aren't going to go, hey, guys, look, we got an arena football team playing at our place now. Go check them out. I'm sure the Spurs would help out with that. And it will make the San Antonio's franchise very successful down there in Texas. So I'm for that. Jordan taking shots, it's funny. Sacramento, just forget about Sacramento. Come on. All right, no more depression about the AFL. We'll preview part. I get those two mixed up all the time. We'll preview championship weekend on the other side. You're listening to This Week in AFL.
Are you an arena football fan looking for the latest news involving your team? Inside the Arena has you covered. Check us out for the latest news around both the Arena Football League and the Chinese Arena Football League. Read all of our stellar articles at InsideTheArena.org. Also, follow us on Twitter at @inside_arena and like us on Facebook at facebook.com/InsideTheArena.
Hi, I'm Donovan James, and welcome to the Don James High School Football Report, everybody, where we discuss and debate the hottest prep and college football recruiting topics in the country every week. Only here on NGSC Sports, 9:30 Eastern. For more, follow me on Twitter at Don James Sports.
It's game time, boys, and we know football. Football the Max is the podcast for you if you want in-depth analysis over the NFL and college football. We preview all the action coming your way over the weekend. And we break down all the big action after it's happened. Plus, we tackle all the big news topics and discuss everything when it comes to the gridiron. So come check out Football to the Max every Tuesday morning and Friday morning on the W2M network.
Dylan, what are Blake Bortles' first half stats?
299 yards, 2 touchdowns, and interceptions.
He could do better than that. He knows it. Rachel, what's the latest on Big Ben's leg injury?
His leg is healing. He should return to the game.
The Steelers will need him the rest of the way, so that's a big break for them. Eric, what's the score in Glendale?
Cardinals lead the Patriots 42-7.
We all saw that coming. Josh, how are Joe Flacco and Cisa coming along?
I mean, I hate to say it, but they're looking good. I mean, they had a great game last week, and they're only one game out of first place in the AFC North.
Don't count them being there that long. Do you want to hear more of that? listening to the Football 5 every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, only on the W2M Network. Also, follow us on Twitter at the Football 5.
Would Flex Seal be a better option at your flex position?
Do you need a sham wow to clean up the mess you make after your quarterback throws another interception?
Then we have the solution for you.
I'm Randy Isbell.
And I'm Mike Mitchell, and we're here to clean up your fantasy mess with more power than OxyClean.
Check out the Fantasy Football to the Max podcast every Monday and Thursday at W2Mnet.com.
Hello to all you Arena League football fans out there. I want to personally welcome you to join us, AFL Fan Zone, every Tuesday night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time for a weekly recap of all things AFL. You got stuff to do on the weekends, which means you probably don't have time to sit down and watch every single game every week. That's where AFL Fan Zone comes in. Not only do we break down the week, but we provide you with everything you need to stay up to date with the AFL, including Players of the Week, Power Rankings, and the weekly standings. Best part is, the recap is fully interactive between the viewers and the host. Just search AFL Fan Zone on YouTube and you can find all of our archived videos, including game previews, recaps, and weekly updates. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, and at our website at www.aflfanzone.com. AFL Fan Zone, your internet home for the best AFL fans.
Welcome back. I just found out voting for the CAFL All-Star Game ends 4 a.m. Eastern Time. 1 a.m. Pacific Time, Jordan's time, 4 p.m. Eastern Time in China. So if you haven't voted, go do it now, CAFLfootball.com. So, wow, we're already at championship weekend. And it's only been 6 weeks. Just feels like it's dragged on forever. I love it. Honestly, I do. I hope, like, we were talking about how there's going to be 10 teams next year. Oh, that's just going to be great. I just can't wait for that.
Yeah, I mean, this whole Super Series type setup has been so fun to watch, so fun to be a part of, so fun, to talk to the guys. I'm a little bit sad that this is championship week. I've had such a great time being able to just enjoy this league and enjoy the growth of this league, the little league that could. It started off, LA Times, Time Magazine, all the recognition they got the Friday before kickoff of Super Series 1, and even now, all the celebrations, as Dylan said earlier, going crazy over Twitter, Bleacher Report. I think ESPN got in on some of the action, CBS Sports. It's been fun to see this league grow and grow and grow and grow, and it's going to be fun to see where this league goes in the next few years.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. We've seen a lot of growth from this league in only 5 or 6 weeks, whether it's with the celebrations or just the quality of play. We've seen a lot of really, really good players, whether they be from China or from America. We've seen some great games, and we've seen some great turnouts. So there was a lot of buzz before the season. We mentioned this before, LA Times and Time Magazine, but this has really grown in 5 short weeks. We're already in championship weekend, and now I can't wait till next season after this one ends, because it was fun to watch. It was an interesting mix of Chinese and American players, both very talented, and it gave us some great games, and it showcased us to some great players, whether it be from the AFL or from America or from China, some players that we have never even heard of before, but now we know because we've seen this in action, and it's been very exciting, and it's going to be a great weekend this weekend, and then the countdown will be until next season when we're going to see another great batch of action.
Personally, I'm not a fan of too many off seasons because sometimes they just drag on and on and on and very little action, and you tend to forget about the league until right comes back. But with the way this first season went down, and knowing the structure and everything that's going to be coming in for next year, I love championship weekend. And when that's over, I'm not going to be sad because we have this entire offseason to see what's the new structure. Who are the new teams? Are they going to be based at home? Are they doing another Super Series? Is it going to be split into divisions? All of these things that we can look forward to and knowing Are a lot of the players, are they going to come back? Which other ones will come back? Are we going to have another big draft? There's so many questions that are going to be answered. And normally when there's that many questions, I'm anxious. But in this case, I'm excited. Very well done. I think they've done it right. And I hope that they continue to do it right.
It's going to be a great finish. I can tell you that right now. First game, it's not so great. I mean, it should be a great finish either way. Shenzhen plays Dalian in the sixth place game. Yeah, that's what I said. Okay. They played in Super Series 1. Shenzhen defense they forced 3 Dalian turnovers, which turned out into 9 points in a 47-13 blowout against Dalian. Now, this might sound a little confusing, so I just want to go slowly with this point here. My point is, Dalian would more likely give the game up, which means they'll turn the ball over, they'll do this, do that to lose the game. Then Shenzhen would struggle. Does that make sense to you guys? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, I mean, it's been Dalian's whole season, hasn't it? We said this earlier in the Super Series 5 recap. Turnover after turnover after turnovers. They really haven't given themselves too much of a chance. So I don't even really know if Shenzhen is going to have that much of a chance to kind of shoot themselves in the foot. Dak Britt coming off the best rushing game in Chinese Arena Football League history. And I'd be kind of curious to see what the stats are. There's not many times where a runner gets over 100 rushing yards. Maybe Eric might know. Eric, I'll phone a friend to you. When was the last time somebody rushed for over 100 yards in Arena Football?
That was Grand Rapids. Michael Bishop. He ran for over 100 yards at quarterback. I want to say this was 07? Might have been 06.
So there you go. We haven't seen a type of game like that in 10 years when it comes to Arena Football. I think Dalian's offense will create more problems. They might give up, when you look at points off of turnovers, they might give up more points than their defense will. At that point, made any sense. This should be an ugly game to watch offensively if you're talking about Dalian and Shenzhen. Really, we know what they're going to do, right? It's just let Dak Britt get the ball and let him run straight up the middle. That's what they've been doing all year, and then nothing's going to change now in the 5th place first game of championship weekend.
Look, this is the glorified toilet bowl of this weekend. I hate to say it, but we're talking about 2 teams that have struggled all season, especially Dalian. Shenzhen finished with 2 wins, one of those being against Dalian. Both teams lack the firepower to really produce points, especially Dalian without Joe Hills. Now, Shenzhen is going to be able to create turnovers like they did in the first game, and they're going to rely on Dak Britt. And Dalian, they don't really know where to turn. They can't rely on their offense to score points. They're just probably going to turn over the ball like they have all season. They're going to let Shenzhen get off to a big lead and not let up. And Dalian is probably going to put up a 13-point game because that's what it's been like all season long. So this is not, if you're choosing one of the 3 games, obviously you want to watch the China Bowl, but if you have other things, do those other things instead of watching this game because it's not going to be pretty. It's probably going to end up being a blowout, and it's not going to be a fun blowout to watch because Shenzhen is not exactly the most exciting team to watch. And when you're putting these 2 teams together, whoever plays Dalian, it's going to end up being a blowout usually. So this is not going to be a pretty game to watch. So I'd suggest you turn your attention somewhere else if you can.
Now, I'm going to have to agree and disagree with the general sentiment of this game. Yes, these teams come in with a combined record of 1-9. That's the facts. Dalian has hardly been able to score. That's the facts. But Shenzhen has also struggled themselves. This is arguably going to be the craziest game of the weekend. This is going to be a game where both teams will be playing more to try to lose or not lose than to actively win. But because of all of that, this may inadvertently turn out to be the best game of the weekend because you don't know what to expect. Could this be the game that Dalian finally gets off the schneid? Unlikely, but I don't know. Could this be the game where Shenzhen keeps putting something together and gets their second win? Likely, but I don't know. I would keep a half an eye on this one just because of the unpredictability.
Wow. Eric calling this one the game of the weekend. That's bold statement right there. We know all about bold statements over here. But yeah, the key for Shenzhen, if he does what he did last week against Dalian, oh God, they're gonna win. They're gonna win by God. I can't even count the points right now. But yeah. So Shenzhen Dalian kicks off championship weekend 5 against 6. Saturday, 2 p.m. East, 2 p.m. China time, 2 a.m. Eastern, 11 p.m. Pacific. One World Sports if you have it. Second game kicks off about 2 hours after the Dalian Shenzhen game ends. Shanghai Skywalkers will take on the Guangzhou Power. We haven't talked much about them today. Shanghai beat Guangzhou, I believe it was Super Series 3. About 2 touchdowns, 13 points, something like that. But this game is so much different. Because I believe it was Super Series 2, actually. Guangzhou went to 0-2 after the loss to Shanghai. Then Guangzhou team is so much different now. This game could get ugly. Because Shane Austin's going against Guangzhou's defense, which they've impressed. Especially Cameron McGlenn, who's making his case for Defensive Player of the Year, like we said last week.
Well, in that game, it was Super Series 2. The Skywalkers got a 45-32 win. In that game, Shane Austin threw for 7 touchdowns, I have written down here in the handy-dandy notebook, and 2 picks, 284 yards. Mike Washington went off for 133 yards, 2 touchdowns. SK, Sean Kalinamoku, went for 76 yards, 3 scores. But like Steven said, this game feels different. It feels a lot different because of the coming out party that Cameron McGlenn and this power defense have created for themselves. So now, Super Series 2, a lot of these teams still trying to figure out what their identity is, and that can happen when you only have 6 games, or 5 games even in a regular season, 6 total. I have written down here in my notes, it's going to be Shane Austin versus Cameron McGlenn. Can the power defense force turnovers against a very turnover-prone Shane Austin? Now, that being said, Skywalkers, as they have had the entire season, have the better roster. They have the more talented players. They have just better players at the positions, but that obviously hasn't led to wins for them. Coming in at 3-2, just skating by over 500. So that being said, if this power defense, which they've been able to in the past, if they can force turnovers, then we might have a really, really good game on our hands here. That being said, I don't know if it's going to be enough for Guangzhou to get the win, but that's the ultimate matchup is Shane Austin against Cameron McGlenn.
Yeah, this is one of the more intriguing games of the weekend. It was a very intriguing game when these two teams played back in Super Series 2. Of course, both teams were trying to get some of the kinks figured out. Now, both of these teams, especially Guangzhou, have their things figured out. Shanghai comes in at 3-2, kind of disappointed because they didn't make the China Bowl, and Guangzhou was looking to finish their season out strong with a win against a Shanghai team that they lost to. They'll be looking for revenge, and against a team that they could prove that they have the talent because they would be beating a team with what we thought had the best talent on paper. But, of course, football games are not played on paper. So this is really going to come down to defense because if Guangzhou can get Shane Austin uncomfortable, Shanghai will probably no doubt be getting off to another slow start, and they can really pound the ball down their throat with Deshaun Johnson at fullback. J.J. Rattering has been improving over these past couple weeks. So another important thing here is the quarterbacks because they both can be inconsistent. Shane Austin, J.J. Rattering, whoever has the better game for me, whoever can create more opportunities for their offenses, will probably have the upper hand. But this is going to be a close game like it was in Super Series 2. And it's going to be one of our better matchups. Of course, it's only 3, so I don't know how much that's saying. But both teams are both very evenly matched, so it should come down to the wire.
Well, the reason why we haven't talked so much about Guangzhou this week is because they've been, I guess you could say, mediocre. Now, we know about Shane Austin, his potential matchup against this defense featuring Cameron McGlynn. I want to go on the other side. How is Ratterink going to do? J.J. Ratterink is basically like Shane Austin, streakier, good arm, potential lots of talent when he's on, but terrible when he's off. The only difference is he's a little bit more mobile. So I think in this quarterback battle, who is going to make the first mistake and who is going to make fewer mistakes? Because we've all seen it. Both of these defenses can capitalize. So whoever wins that quarterback matchup in this game more than any other game this season, that's going to be the decider. If it's best on best, it might come out Shane Austin may be a winner, but it's very hard to say.
Eric brought up another point that I was going to bring up. J.J. Ratterink is the turnover machine. And even if you put in Alex Carter, the backup for Guangzhou, you're not getting much better. So I believe that Shane Austin, he's not key. Mike Washington and Sean Kalinamuka will be key for his team to beat Guangzhou. But they do have an advantage, Shanghai, because both Guangzhou's quarterbacks, they're just so inaccurate and turn the ball over. It could be close, but I don't know. We'll see. That game, Shanghai against Guangzhou, 7 p.m. China time, Saturday. 7 a.m. Eastern time, 4 a.m. Pacific time, One World Sports. And the game of the year, China Bowl 1. Love saying that. The Beijing Lions and the Qingdao Clipper. Beijing, we talked about it earlier in the show. Beijing beat Qingdao. What series was that, Jordan?
Give me a second here. Let me flip to it in my notes.
I know that Beijing came up with the win because obviously they're 5-0 on the season, looking to go perfect against Qingdao's defense that has Tanner Varner. We talked to him last week. That was a great interview. Listen to that on iTunes. And it's going to be very difficult with both quarterbacks going up against Tanner Varner and the Qingdao defense, which we kept saying that this was the best defense in the league.
Yeah, so that game, the rematch of the Super Series 3 matchup, that game ended 47-33 Beijing. In this game, we saw Beijing being Beijing. The Lions got up to a 28-point lead. I can't remember what the score was, but it was 28 points. And then just like that, Qingdao comes roaring back and cuts the game down to 41-33. Down by 28, they score 20 to get it to an 8-point game. And Qingdao even had a chance to tie the game, but a late turnover killed the game, and Beijing held on for the victory. That being said, we talked to Colin Taylor. We've talked to Tanner Varner. In that game, Colin Taylor called it kind of the quote-unquote CT show. Colin Taylor went off on Tanner Varner. Let's see if I have his stats. 10 receptions for 124 yards and 3 TDs, all of which came in the first half, however. So it's going to be interesting to see how the Qingdao defense comes back and kind of counters what the CT show was in Super Series 3. I think, Clint Dozel, the head coach for the Philadelphia Soul and the Beijing Lions, Tanner said it that schemes for everyone individually. So it's going to be a little bit intriguing to see who he picks out this week and what is the first ever championship game in the Chinese Arena Football League. And like Steven says, it feels great to say that. It's going to be a great game to watch. And it's going to be, another thing too for Beijing is, can they hold on to a lead? They haven't been able to do that all season. It almost killed them against Qingdao. Granted, they went up to win by 14 after the late turnover. But that being said, it hasn't cost them. But will this be the first week that blowing that lead cost them? That's what we're going to find out this weekend.
I mentioned earlier in the show, when you can't hold on to a lead in a championship game, which this is, it's going to be tough. This Beijing team, only undefeated team in the CAFL this season. They have the talent to overcome their mid-game slumps, and they've shown that the entire year. they've gotten out to quick starts, they've let it go, and then they've ramped it back up. So they've done enough to win all 5 of their games, but now it is time. This is it. This is for all the marbles. They're playing a Qingdao team that has been neck and neck with them all year. Only lost them by 2 touchdowns, and they came back from down 28, which is very impressive, especially against the Beijing team with all the talent that they have. So this is that matchup of offense versus defense that we always seem to get in title games. Qingdao with that defense and Beijing with that offense. It's going to be a very interesting matchup and expected to be very similar to the one that we saw in Super Series 3. For Beijing, we've got Colin Taylor, one of the best receivers and probably the best receiver in the CAFL. We've got Luke Collis, who's been very, very impressive at quarterback. And then when you flip over to the Qingdao defense, you've got Tanner Varner, Jake Metz, a bunch of marquee players on that defense. And Colin Taylor did burn Tanner Varner in that matchup. We'll see if Tanner Varner can make up for his part. This is going to be a great championship game. Expected to be close, expected to come down to the wire, and expected to see who can make that play, that turnover. And it's going to be a great game in China Bowl 1.
Personally, and Dylan brought up this great point, high-powered offense, one of the best in the league against the best defense in the league. And going back to what I said earlier, look at how the teams finished in Super Series 5 going into this game. Qingdao is going to be hungry. Tanner Varner is going to think about his friend Colin Taylor burning him. He's going to want to make that big play. Jake Metz, we haven't talked about him as an individual this season, just as part of a unit. Can he put his name in lights and into potentially the record books? These are the things that the Clippers are going to think about simply because defense does win championships. They want to say, hey, we did what a few teams throughout history before. We beat the unbeatable. This is what the Clippers want. And for Beijing, if they let up at least once, they could be done. They have not played a mistake-free game all season. And in the championship, you have to play mistake-free if you want a chance to win, let alone blow anybody out like they have. I don't honestly know if they're capable of playing mistake-free football. If they can, they'll win. But if not, 5-0 means nothing.
5-0 means nothing. Wow. I don't know if I agree with that because they are 5-0. But it would definitely be upset. It'd be upsetting if they do wind up losing China Bowl 1 to Qingdao on Sunday. Now here's a point. Here's an interesting point. Qingdao just lost. Now, not only did they lose to Shenzhen, they let Shenzhen compete with them. That says a lot about the defense. So I'm thinking maybe this Qingdao defense after that game against Shenzhen, they might be beat up a little bit. They might not be able to compete with the Lions offense that has Colin Taylor, Erwin Sinet-Wu, Luke Collis, and Chris Diker on the offense.
It's an interesting point. It's an interesting thing to think about because when you look at Shenzhen's offense, it's a completely different offense than everybody else. Eric said it a couple weeks ago or last show or whenever he said it's more an AFL style offense, right? They run the ball a whole lot. That's been kind of the thing we've been talking about this show, that Dak Britt went off against them. So it's a different kind of game planning that you have to go through when you play against a team like Shenzhen. So that being said, after that battle in the trenches that most of the guys, especially the arena football guys, aren't used to, when you have to defend the run as much as 25 times in last week's case for Qingdao, it's a little bit of a different thing to adjust for. And now, like Steven said, you could be beat up. You know, we heard Tanner say last week that he kind of nicked up his hammy a little bit, so he was going to be quote unquote taking it easy, whatever that means in terms of the game. But that's something very key to look out for, is how that front line, you know, headed by Defensive Player of the Year last year in the Arena Football League, Jake Metz, how they play, and are they still susceptible to the run? Does that does Beijing look at last week's game and think, if all else fails, we could still run the ball for a little bit? That's a very interesting how that front line responds to the drubbing that they took last week at the hands of Shenzhen when it comes from a rushing attack.
I mentioned that this Qingdao team is not entering the best situations coming off of a loss against Shenzhen, and that comes for their defense, which is their best unit. That is what they rely on to win them games. And now they're going up against, like I said earlier, probably the best offense in the league in Beijing. They're going to come and beat up. This is the championship. So they've played 5 Super Series. It's come through. They're going to be injured, and they're probably going to be beat up. Last week was a tough game, lost by 7. Probably not the game they wanted going into the China Bowl. So they're going to be beat up a little bit, and they're going to want answers early against the Beijing team that gets off to fast starts. And if they are nicked up a little bit, even a little bit against this Beijing offense, they might be getting off to another big lead, but we know what that means for Beijing. So they're going to come in injured. That's what happens at the end of a season. And we're going to see, it's going to be very interesting as to how it impacts a Clipper defense that has been their building block so far this season.
Well, this kind of goes back into changing the mentalities. How beat up are the Clippers secondary? Because as you transition back into a traditional arena football defense to where you defend the pass almost exclusively, if their secondary is healthy, then they're going to be okay. I think they can still manage. Now, if Beijing wants, they can take advantage of a bruised and beaten up front 5, run the ball a little more early to set up the pass. That way you can establish a big lead and hopefully you've learned your lesson. But if they're going to play a traditional pass just about every down offense, then that'll put the pressure off your 2 linebackers, little bit on the defensive line because they still have to generate pressure. But when you're going back, this is going to focus on completely different parts of the team. Now, as a whole, yes, they're beaten up, but if they can make this transition and be healthy enough to play that style sooner, they'll be fine.
Beijing Qingdao China Bowl 1, Sunday, 3 p.m. in China, 3 a.m. Eastern Time, midnight Pacific Time, One World Sports. All right, so let's go real quick here. Picks, our final of the season. Well, maybe next week we'll pick the All-Star game. We'll start with Shenzhen and Dalian. Who you guys got winning this game?
Well, if you've been following the podcast, our picks have not really been too kind to us this year. But I think you'd have to, I don't know. I mean, Eric said this could be a good game just because these two teams are not exactly as good as the other teams, and that's kind of being nice about it. This game, I'm not ready to pick Dalian to win anything quite yet. I'm picking Shenzhen. I think Shenzhen will win by a couple scores. Just their defense will first a couple turnovers, lead to some easy possessions for Dak Britt, and he'll punch it in the end zone. I got Shenzhen by at least 2 scores.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Shenzhen as well. I can't pick Dalian. They haven't been able to move the ball. They've been prone to committing turnovers. They can't force turnovers on defense. That's not going to come to a winning formula. Shenzhen is coming off a big win. It's going to be hard to be motivated. Dalian's going to want that win badly, but they just don't have the talent and they don't have the ability to put together enough points to win, so I'm going to go with Shenzhen.
Low scoring, ugly, first 1 to 30 wins. I've got Shenzhen, but I think it's going to come down to the wire.
I got Shenzhen because Dak Britt's going to light it up again. I feel like if he could do that against Qingdao, I can't imagine what he's going to do against Dalian. Good God, what he's going to do against Dalian. This could be terrible. All right, second game, Shanghai and Guangzhou.
Let me start this off like Eric would. Personally, I got a little bit of a conflict with this one because Shanghai has been, or they should have been, the super team all season long. But there's the big but. They're playing in the 3rd place game. what I want now, my brain and my heart are telling me two different things. Who do I want to win? I think I'm pulling for Guangzhou a little bit to beat Shanghai in Shanghai, just because that would be the cooler story to see this power team start off rough, drop their first two games to two very, very good teams. It might have even been against Shanghai and Beijing, if I remember correctly, all the way back almost a month ago. I would like to see this power team win this game in the battle of the two quarterbacks who turn the ball over. But my brain is telling me Shanghai. I haven't been able to pick against Shanghai all year to some detriment. But I would like to see Guangzhou win, but I don't think they will. I'm going with Shanghai in this one.
Yeah, I agree with Jordan here. I think I'm going to go with Shanghai. I think they have enough talent to pull them out of their slow start that is typical of them. Guangzhou is going to want the win. Shanghai might not want it as much. It's going to be very close. It'll come down to the wire. But I think Shanghai has enough talent to get past their little motivation and their slow start, typical of them, to win this game.
If there was ever going to be a team amped up by the home crowd, it would be Shanghai. Yes, even with the slow start. Yes, even with the turnovers. I think Guangzhou is a little bit more drained. They're not going to have that energy. And I think Shane Austin can keep it under a little bit more control. I got Shanghai taking this one.
I'm going Shanghai too. 2 words. Mike Washington. Nobody can beat him. He hasn't been beat all season. Every time he scores a touchdown, it's like he's on an island. He's by himself in the end zone. Nobody can cover this guy. He is the Shanghai Skywalkers on offense. It is time to pick our China Bowl 1 champion between the Beijing Lions and the Qingdao Clipper.
Whew, what a good game this is going to be. Now, let's take a look here. The Beijing Lions, there's a reason they're called the Lions. They're at the top of the food chain for a reason. I think I'm going to have to pick Beijing in this one. And, you might say, well, you're just picking the higher seed in every single game. Yes, true point. That's because I think the higher seed has been the better team by a wide stretch in each of these games. Granted, Qingdao has probably the most talented and one of the best defenses in the league. However, Beijing's defense, pretty darn good. Have you seen that Torres Jones interception from last week? Goes up in the end zone, no less, with one hand, picks it off like it's nothing. One of the plays of the season. This is, like we said earlier, the CT show, Colin Taylor versus Tanner Varner. I think Taylor is going to win that matchup one more time. You have 2 of the best receivers in the league with Erwin Sinet Wu, Colin Taylor. I think the Lions are going to remain on top, and Qingdao's championship dream is going to sail away. Pun very much intended. I got Beijing this one, becoming the first ever China Bowl champion, the first ever undefeated team in this league.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Lions here to pull off a Miami Dolphins move. Granted, they've played a significant amount of less games, but nonetheless, they're going to finish undefeated. They've been perfect this season, pretty much, other than their problem with keeping leads. Most efficient offense, most efficient defense, not allowing the least amount of points on defense. They can't do much better than they have been this season. I think they have the talent. I think they have the ability to beat a Qingdao team that offensively is not going to be able to produce against the Beijing defense, like I said, has been the most efficient this season. And Qingdao has quite the defense of their own, but they're going to be beat up. Last week was a tough loss. And I think Beijing rides their momentum into this game, and they become the first ever China Bowl champion.
Ugh. I can just tell right now, Colin Taylor may hate me. And with next week's dinner, I'm probably going to be eating a little crow, so I'm going to save some room. However, where Dylan sees the 72 Miami Dolphins, I don't. Going back, the first NFL champion, the Akron Pros, they were undefeated, but they were only 8-0-3. Yes, they had 3 ties. But I mention this for a reason. They're the only team of any of the major sports who went through the first season of the league's history undefeated and became champions. That happens for a reason. Are the Qingdao going to be the 1972 Redskins? No. Will this be still a defensive battle? Yes. I think the Clipper can adjust. I think they can do what the Giants did, create just enough offense, timely plays, maybe a game-winning drive in the last minute like that Super Bowl. The Clipper, out of nowhere, China Bowl 1 champions.
I love the analogy, comparing that to the 2007 Patriots. I was thinking the same thing, but I couldn't think of the Clippers as the 07 Giants, so they're not that bad. I'm going with Beijing because we gave so much hype to the Skywalkers. We called them the Super Skywalkers every show, every week. But we haven't heard about the loaded Lions. My God, this offense is powerhouse. We didn't know anything about Luke Collis, I should say, not Colin Taylor. Luke Collis, Chris Diker, Erwin Sinet. We didn't know about these guys. And then on defense, Torres Jones making athletic plays. James Romaine do what he did in Philadelphia. He's bringing it over to Beijing. This team is just absolutely loaded with talent. There's no way that they don't finish 6-0. There's just no way. Plus, if the Beijing Lions do win, we get to talk to 3 athletes next week. That is going to be awesome. So, before we end the show, I want to make a special announcement here. Today is Jordan Palacio's birthday. He joined up with AFL Fan Zone, I believe back in August, right, Jordan?
Ooh, late July, early August? Yeah, I think so.
Right. Well, now, here in early November, Jordan Palacio is joining Inside the Arena. He will be the official co-host of This Week in the AFL throughout the 2017 season, so we want to welcome Jordan to the team.
Absolutely. Have had some of the most fun in my extremely young journalism career with you guys being able to talk on this podcast, being able to talk with the other guys at AFL Fan Zone. It's just been a great community to be a part of. Still looking for people if you want to just join that community a little bit. Can't wait for the 2017 AFL season. It's going to be fun. It's been fun right now with you guys, and just looking forward to the future. Can't wait to get started.
Needing it, man. So that's going to do it here for us. This Week in the AFL. Jordan Palacio, Dylan Goldman, Eric Watkins. I'm Stephen Err. Enjoy championship weekend. We'll be back to recap it all. Hopefully we'll have 3 athletes with us on the show, and we'll preview the All-Star game.
Okay, to the Giants' credit.
The following podcast is a W2M Network partnership production. Visit W2Mnet.com for all of our other great podcasts, plus news, reviews, articles, and opinions from the worlds of wrestling, video games, football, and entertainment.